on the Hezbollah terrorist organization and a secretive unit they have here in the United States, basically a sleeper cell in the U.S. That is essentially waiting for the order from Iran to strike. Real quick, before we get into all that, could you give people who aren't familiar with you just a little bit of information about your background?
Sure. I am a recovering journalist. I was a reporter for 23 years and moved after that, for newspapers. I was a newspaper guy. Worked for like the Dallas Morning News on staff for 10 years and Hearst and CBS. And then moved to the intelligence business. I was recruited to join the Texas Department of Public Safety's Intelligence and Counterterrorism Division. And I worked for almost 10 years doing that, another 10 years. And then now I'm just working for the Center for Immigration Studies as a policy analyst. They, are based in D.C. I'm still in Texas, doing a lot of border security policy analysis and writing, kind of almost full circle back to my writing and publishing days. I got a couple of books out in the last few years since I've been doing that. So intelligence, journalism, I don't know what I am.
All right. Well, you're definitely a border expert, and it's a huge issue right now with some of the concerns we're seeing with the southern border and the 10 million people that have come across since Joe Biden's tenure as president, which we can get into here in a little bit. Right now, let's focus on this group with Hezbollah. So it's Unit 910. It's a Hezbollah sleeper cell. Tell us a little bit about that organization and how you came across knowing that the information leading you to understand the depth to which they may have already infiltrated the U.S.
Well, first of all, know that this is a very real thing. They actually, the U.S. designated terrorist group Hezbollah actually does field operatives around the world who are specifically trained in conducting attacks, counter surveillance, weapons collection. What they mainly do is they collect target lists in the areas where they live, and then they collect the capability to execute an attack on those target lists. Meaning it could be ammunition, it could be bomb-making material, it could be firearms and that sort of thing. And then they are in constant communication with Beirut, with the Hezbollah leaders. The organization, it's called the IJO, the Islamic Jihadist Organization, or often known as Unit 910. They are in the United States. We know this because we catch them. And when we catch them, we prosecute them federally. And there have been quite a few major prosecutions in the United States of Unit 910 operatives. The last couple that you're probably referring to are the ones that I used to base the 3-part series on about Unit 910 in America, because those cases were so top-loaded with documentation and material. Clearly, the government wanted the American people to have this information. So I extracted the material from the public court files and wrote a 3-part series based on what they were doing in the United States and outside of the United States. One of these cases was out of Dearborn, Michigan, and the other one was out of Brooklyn, New York. Both cases just wrapped up, I want to say in 2020, with prison sentences. And really, those are a roadmap to Unit 910 in the United States.
So based on the information that you uncovered, how many people would you estimate that are part of this unit have infiltrated the U.S.?
Nobody really knows. It's really difficult to know. That we have caught them in the past, even before these two. There was one case in 2004 of another Unit 910 guy. That one smuggled in over the border, the southern border, in the trunk of a car. His name was Ali Karani. There have been others that have crossed in over the border, Hezbollah as well. But We don't know. What the purpose is for 910 is, so that, Iran, which runs Hezbollah and uses Hezbollah for its own preservation of power, the Islamic Revolution, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, Al-Quds, all of those guys, they work together. Hezbollah is part of it, is to project a credible threat to leverage diplomacy. So if the U.S. government knows that, on a whim, Tehran could order attacks inside the United States, in their minds, that is it's a leverage point. We have not seen them actually pull the trigger on it in the United States, but we have seen them pull the trigger on Unit 910 operatives in Thailand and Bulgaria in recent years. Those were classic Unit 910 operatives, conducted attacks against Israelis, killed some, had other attacks thwarted in the nick of time elsewhere. And we know that we have caught Unit 910 operatives in Bolivia, Peru, Argentina, the tri-border area, Venezuela. They are all over the world. They're all over Latin America. We believe that they are in Nicaragua as well, and regimes that are friendly. They're leftist regimes that are friendly to the Iranian regime, and that they'll have Unit 910 in those places.
So obviously this organization has tentacles throughout the entire globe. In terms of the specific threat to the U.S. homeland, what sort of targets might be hit? I mean, one of the things that we saw with the October 7th attack by Hamas against Israel was that they attacked the music festival, and as people were fleeing, they were shooting people in their cars as they were traveling down the highway. Is that the type of attack we might see here, or what could we expect if they were given an order to strike the U.S.?
A wide variety. We know from the Dearborn and Brooklyn cases of 2018 to 2020 what their target lists were. They published them. They were targeting dual Israeli-U.S. citizens who had dual citizenship, that people that were U.S. citizens but were also in the Israeli Defense Forces, federal agents, federal offices, FBI offices, armories, National Guard armories. We know that they were looking for prominent businessmen, Jewish businessmen and women, Jewish businesses, Jewish places of worship, but also, just good old-fashioned, U.S. government buildings. So their target lists were diverse enough for the Iranian government and maybe Beirut, the leaders of Hezbollah in Beirut, could send particular messaging based on the targets. But these guys traveled. The Dearborn one, 910, his name was El Debek. They had him traveling to Panama quite often to map out targets in Panama City, at the canal, in the canal zone, the Israeli consulate office in Panama. And he would go down there and stay for a month or 6 weeks at a time, mapping out targets, finding safe houses, figuring out which hardware stores sold which kind of precursor chemicals for explosives and that sort of thing. The other one, Karani in Brooklyn, was being ordered to Thailand on specific missions that were related to the attacks there. He directly collaborated in some of the attack planning and preparation in 2012, 2011, and then would return home as though nothing happened. So they use these guys to travel all over the world, especially the ones that have managed to get naturalized as U.S. citizens so that they can get a passport and move back and forth without a whole lot of questioning.
And that was the case with Karani. I mean, he wasn't here legally. He was able to obtain documents and obtain his citizenship, as was his father. His father, I think I read, came through the U.S. southern border illegally as well, and was able to become a naturalized citizen. So, yeah, they're hard to detect because they sort of just live and work among us and appear to be, legitimate immigrants operating in the United States.
They're trained in spycraft. So, I mean, you can almost forgive our, apparatus, our security apparatus, because, I mean, unless we've got a leak into, who the spies are, that they're trained to evade detection, and that's what they do. That's what they did. And that's what they're doing now. I can assure you that they are here still doing exactly that.
So as this conflict in the Middle East ramps up, we've seen over the last couple of weeks attacks on U.S. Infrastructure over in the Middle East, attacks on U.S. ships by Iran specifically. This is an Iranian-backed organization. What sort of activities or what sort of things would trigger a strike order from Iran to activate this group inside the United States to order strikes?
Well, I mean, we can speculate about it, but, I thought for sure we might see 9/10 attacks when Donald Trump ordered the assassination and killing of a very popular general, Iranian general in Iraq, just a few years ago. And I think he ordered that the use of one of those, they call it a sushi bomb, which is fired from a drone, and they call it a sushi bomb because it's just blades that just cut, and there wasn't much left. But the Iranian government swore vengeance against the United States, and to this day they're still warning vengeance. And they told Trump when he was still in office, Mr. Trump, we are closer than you think. And that was, to me, a direct reference to Unit 910. But here we are 3, 4, 5 years later, and they haven't struck. They may still one day strike. But we can envision that, there are 2 U.S. aircraft carriers off the coast of Israel in the northern Mediterranean that are there ostensibly to deter Hezbollah from using its longer range rockets against Israeli civilians. They've got about 150,000 medium, and long range rockets that they could fire. And the aircraft carriers are supposedly there to, help Israel out if push came to shove. In a moment like that, I would be very concerned again that they would activate these, individual terrorist cells in the United States or anywhere else and attack our interests, our people, our personnel, our companies, businesses, allies, and that sort of thing. So the conflict in the Middle East right now, I think, kind of heightens things. I'm sure that they've got those Unit 910 guys right now sharpening their knives, getting ready, updating their target lists, kind of getting ready just in case. Now, on the other hand, once they pull that trigger, it's kind of like there's one shot in the shotgun, right? Because once they do one of those and Unit 910 is activated, they must know that our security and intelligence apparatus will absolutely go through the country with a fine-tooth comb, eradicating them one by one, and they will no longer be able to present that threat. So once they pull that trigger one time, I think they only get one shot at it, and they lose that kind of that projection of kinetic power against us. So they're going to do it very judiciously if they do it.
In your estimation, would there sort of be an increased threat given that we have a presidential election next year?
I'm not sure that. We've had presidential elections. I don't think that they would waste that leverage on a thing like that. They're looking to, be able to retaliate. I am still pretty surprised that they didn't trigger when Trump killed General Soleimani in 2019, I think it was. They're still promising to do it. So I'm not sure what would trigger them. If not that, I'm not sure what. maybe the aircraft carriers going into action side by side with Israel might do it.
And it seems like sort of the broader issue here is that we have a problem with security in this country, in part because of the poor southern border. I mean, more than 10 million illegal aliens have come across the border since Joe Biden has taken office. We've caught more than 160 people on the terrorist watch list down there. The CBP has issued a warning about the potential for terrorists infiltrating the United States through the southern border. I think Director Chris Wray gave a statement during congressional testimony last week saying the same thing. Mayor Eric Adams recently warned of the same thing, numerous congressional officials. How at risk is the United States because of our open southern border right now? And then if there is a strategic or a substantial risk in your opinion, how do we go about pressuring our lawmakers to actually fix the problem?
Well, I don't want to overstate the threat or get hyperbolic about it. I do believe that we have an elevated threat of somebody coming across that border right now and doing something in the United States, or somebody who has already crossed recently is seeing the war unfold, and they're emotionally attached to the conflict and angry, and maybe would pop off. Maybe they didn't come across initially to do harm against the country, but that they're predisposed. They were raised and born. They're seeing Israeli troops just absolutely slaughter Hamas and win that war. There's almost nothing that sends diehard Muslim jihadists into apoplectic fits of rage than seeing heavily armed Jews wreak vengeance on their enemies. They absolutely can't take it. And so because of that and the images coming out, I do worry that people are going to take it out on a shopping mall, on a church, on a synagogue, on a Jewish target. We have had in the last 3 years about 300 people cross that border that got caught, apprehended, who were already on the FBI's terrorism watch list. That is a historic number. We've never had that many. I was in the intel business working on that problem. We never had more than 20 in any given year, and that was in Mexico too. So maybe 10 in any given year, and we've had like 160 plus just in 2023. We also have had more special interest aliens cross the border. Those are people from countries of terrorism concern than we've ever had in the history of since we've started tracking them 20 years ago. About 75,000, maybe 100,000 in just the last year from countries where Islamic terrorist organizations operate. That is mostly, single young men that are crossing. They're coming from Muslim majority countries. We have no idea who they really are. Not everybody who deserves to be on a watch list is on a watch list. We had a court prosecution, a federal prosecution just earlier this year, where an Iraqi asylum seeker in Ohio plotted to bring 4 Al-Qaeda/ISIS terrorists in over the southern border to assassinate George W. Bush here in Texas. Thank God the FBI uncovered that in time, and they shut that whole plot down. It was a real plot, though. It was not a sting. And it shows that the bad guys do understand that our border right now is just vulnerable and wide open, and maybe easier to enter the country than gaming the visa system or flying in and trying to get through customs at an airport sort of thing. And they would be right. It is easier to get in that way now. And so for those reasons, I think that the risk is elevated that people that came in already over that border would fly into a rage over Israeli victory on Hamas. The Israelis are just slaughtering hundreds of fighters. They'll kill 150 in a single day. in the war. I mean, they're just winning, and militarily winning. And I could see something like that, but I could also see an organized terror cell being sent over, like they tried to do in that one court case out of Ohio. That's a long answer, I get it, but.
So what does the average person do in sort of this enhanced threat environment?
Well, unfortunately, the Biden administration is absolutely determined to keep things as they are, all spigots open. Almost everybody who reaches the southern border gets in, which messages back downstream to the villages, and those are all emptying out. Coming also, the selfies go, and so that you've got an unmanageable swell of humanity right now. They for their own reasons want this. It's not an accident. It is by design. It's orchestrated. It's on purpose, and I don't think that they intend to change it between now and the election. So vote. If you don't like it, vote for the candidates that are going to shut it down. But until then, there's not a whole lot anybody can do. No state can shut this down. It's a federal issue. Texas can try to do what it's doing, but there's Arizona, New Mexico, and California too.
Awesome. Well, hopefully we could get some changes in our leaders who will actually take the border issue a little bit more seriously. This is something that Republicans and Democrats used to agree on. I mean, Democrats back in the 2006 era supported the Secure Fence Act. This is something that it wasn't a partisan issue until it seemed about 2016. And now, this is something that's it could potentially impact all of us. I mean, terrorists aren't going to discriminate if they come across the border with a plan to harm Americans. They don't care what political party you're in. They don't care what your background is necessarily. They don't care what your race is. They're looking to do damage to Americans. So hopefully, some kind of way we can find a solution to this and sort of get this thing under control.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's kind of where we are. People complain that I'm depressing about that when I get asked, what can we do? But everybody has tried everything for 3 years straight, and they are just determined to keep the spigots on maximum. Or what's that show? There's a movie, I turn it to 11. So they're dialing it to 11. That's what they want.
Awesome. Well, Todd, for anybody who wants to reach out to you or yell out to you, where can they find you online?
Yeah, that's right. I'm on social media. I've got Bensman Todd at X. I've got an account on Getter that's very active, and Truth Social. So those three, join me up there. And I've got a website, toddbensman.com. I write for a lot of different publications, and that's one place where I put everything. So you can, you don't have to search around. You can just go to toddbensman.com. My employer is the Center for Immigration Studies, CIS.org, and I've got a lot of material there too.
Awesome.
I didn't mention my book. I do have
definitely.
If you don't mind, I do have a book called Overrun: How Joe Biden Unleashed the Greatest Border Crisis in U.S. History. It's the only book out there about how this border crisis started, what it looked like on the ground. It's based on a lot of migrant interviews, and it's available anywhere books are sold, bookstores, Amazon, and there's even an Audible version of it.
Awesome. I would definitely have to check that out. Thank you so much for joining me. I love the work that you do. I've cited you numerous times, and I look forward to hopefully talking with you in the future.
Anytime. Thank you.